Imani Johnson stood alone outside the Silver Wingspan Airlines terminal. Her designer clothes drenched in champagne as stunned employees trickled out, clutching termination papers. Hours earlier, she had been the powerful CEO of a billion-dollar tech empire. Now, she was watching an entire airline staff lose their livelihoods. Collateral damage from a scandal she never saw coming. But before we unpack how one woman's public humiliation ignited a firestorm that would reshape corporate America, tell us, where are you watching from today? And if you've ever witnessed discrimination that made your blood boil, hit that like and subscribe button now. What you're about to hear changed an entire industry overnight. That morning, sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Imani's penthouse as she meticulously prepared for a day that promised history. At 38, she was one of the most formidable CEOs in the tech world. Vertex Innovation Technologies, the company she built from a spark of determination and a bold idea, had grown into a $3 billion juggernaut. Her mornings followed a strict, almost ritualistic pattern, up at 5 a.m. for yoga and meditation. A protein-packed breakfast while scanning global market reports. But today carried a different weight. In 12 hours, she'd be landing in Tokyo to finalize a $750 million deal, the biggest in Vertex's history. Miss Johnson, your car will arrive in 30 minutes, announced her AI-powered smart home system technology she herself had helped pioneer. Imani allowed herself a brief, knowing smile. Growing up on Detroit's East Side, this life had seemed like a distant dream. Her father, a factory worker, and her mother, a nurse who clocked endless double shifts, had sacrificed everything to give her a shot at more. She remembered that modest, impeccably kept home in her grandmother's words, echoing in her mind, "You've got to be twice as good to get half as far." It was a mantra that had carried her through countless battles, professors mistaking her for campus staff at Harvard, male classmates claiming her ideas as their own at Stanford, investors bypassing her to speak to her male assistant during Vertex's early days. A knock at the door broke her reverie. "Package for you, Miss Johnson," Tanya, her executive assistant, called out. Tanya had been with Imani since day one, one of the few people who truly grasped what she had built and what it had cost. "The final presentation documents for Tokyo," Tanya explained, handing her a sleek leather portfolio. "I added the extra security protocols they requested. Vincent finished the market projections last night." Imani nodded, skimming through the documents. This wasn't just another contract. Vertex's groundbreaking AI security system had the potential to revolutionize how governments and corporations protected their most sensitive data. Securing the Japanese market would set a new global standard. "Any updates from our competitors?" Imani asked, eyes still scanning the pages. "Whitfield Tech submitted their bid yesterday," Tanya replied, her expression darkening. "Bradley Whitfield's been in Tokyo for a week already, whining and dining the execs." Imani felt her chest tighten. Bradley Whitfield embodied everything she'd fought against her entire career: old money, old networks, and old rules. His technology was second-rate, but his privilege opened doors Imani still had to kick down. "Our product will speak for itself," Imani said, straightening her shoulders. "And so will I." After one final check in the mirror, every hair in place, every accessory chosen to command authority, she grabbed her custom briefcase, a gift from her team after hitting their first billion-dollar valuation, the car. Ride to the airport was filled with calls to board members and final reviews of security protocols. This deal wasn't just business, it was legacy. As the sleek black sedan pulled up to the airport terminal, Imani allowed herself a moment of pride. From a tiny apartment in Detroit to negotiating a near billion-dollar deal in Tokyo, she had defied every statistic and demolished every barrier. "We'll have the quarterly reports ready when you land, Miss Johnson," Tanya said, helping with her carry-on. "Perfect," Imani replied. "And Tanya, get some rest this weekend. We're going to be busy when this deal closes. With her head high, Imani entered the terminal, unaware that the next few hours would test her in ways even her remarkable life had not prepared her for. Inside, the exclusive silver wingspan VIP lounge occupied the entire west wing of the international terminal, its marble floors gleaming under crystal chandeliers, offering panoramic views of the runway, a haven for the airline's elite clientele. Approaching the reception desk, platinum membership card in hand, Imani's heels clicked sharply against the polished floor. "Good afternoon," she greeted the receptionist, a slender man whose name tag read Carlton. "Imani Johnson, Tokyo Flight 472. Carlton's gaze flickered from her face to her card and back again. A moment of hesitation, then a tight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Of course, Miss Johnson," he said, fingers tapping a little too long at the keyboard. Imani recognized this. The subtle pause, the double check, the unspoken question about whether she belonged. After years in these spaces, she could spot microaggressions instantly. "Everything appears to be in order," Carlton finally said, his tone betraying mild surprise. "Please enjoy our amenities. Your flight begins boarding in approximately 2 hours. "Thank you," Imani replied evenly, keeping her dignity intact as always. As she made her way through the lounge, she felt the weight of lingering stares. A middle-aged white couple whispered behind champagne flutes. A businessman in an ill-fitting suit did a double-take, then quickly returned to his laptop. None of this was new. These small indignities were the price she paid to exist in elite spaces, never built for women like her. The lounge itself was arranged in clusters of intimate seating, the most coveted spots offering breathtaking views of departing planes. Imani selected a seat by the window, her place in a world she had every right to claim. After landing in the lounge, Imani selected an elegant armchair tucked into a corner with an unobstructed view of the runway, the perfect vantage point to gather her thoughts. She set her briefcase neatly beside her and ordered a sparkling water from a passing attendant, then opened her tablet to review her presentation. One last time, the atmosphere was serene until a commotion by the entrance drew her attention. A tall, broad-shouldered white man with perfectly styled silver hair and a crimson tie was speaking animatedly to Carlton at the front desk, gesturing toward the seating area with obvious irritation. Even from a distance, Imani instantly recognized him. Bradley Whitfield, CEO of Whitfield Technologies, Vertex's chief rival, and, it appeared, a fellow passenger to Tokyo. His raised voice carried across the otherwise quiet lounge. "What do you mean it's occupied? That's my seat. I always sit there when I fly through here." Carlton's demeanor shifted entirely. The cool, reserved professionalism he'd shown Imani, replaced by an eager obsequiousness. "I understand, Mr. Whitfield. Let me see what I can do." Moments later, the lounge manager appeared, a wiry man with a receding hairline, whose name tag read Wayne. He and Carlton exchanged a hurried, hushed conversation before both approached Imani together, their faces tight with awkward determination. "Excuse me, Miss Johnson," Wayne began, his voice lowered as though to soften what was coming. "It seems there's been a bit of a misunderstanding." Imani looked up from her tablet, face composed, eyes sharp. "And what misunderstanding would that be?" Wayne shifted uncomfortably. "This particular seating area is usually reserved for our long-time platinum members. Mr. Whitfield has used this spot for many years." Imani closed her tablet with calm deliberation. "I'm a platinum member too," she replied, retrieving her membership card. "And I wasn't aware that specific seats were assigned to specific members." Wayne's strained smile tightened. "They're not officially assigned, of course. It's more of a courtesy we extend to our most valued customers." "I see," Imani said evenly, fully aware of the growing number of eyes now watching their exchange. "And I'm not considered a most valued customer, despite my platinum status." By then, Bradley Whitfield had closed the distance, standing just behind Wayne, arms crossed, face set in a mask of barely concealed impatience. "It's just that Mr. Whitfield always sits here," Carlton blurted, as if repeating the rationale would somehow make it sound reasonable. "I've been a member for 8 years, Imani countered smoothly. "And there's nothing in the membership agreement about seat seniority or personal habits." She gestured to the nearly empty lounge. "There are plenty of seats with the same view." Wayne's expression hardened a fraction. "Miss Johnson, we're simply trying to accommodate all our guests. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in one of our other seating areas. The eastern section is quite nice this time of day." The implication was clear. Move, or be made to move. Imani felt a familiar fire spark in her chest, that sharp, sickening heat that always came with being dressed down in public. Not for any legitimate reason, but for the unspoken one. "I'm perfectly comfortable right here, thank you," she said evenly. "I arrived first, I'm a platinum member, and I have every right to this seat." Bradley stepped forward, looming over both Wayne and Carlton. At 5 feet 7 inches in heels, Imani still had to tilt her head to meet his gaze, but her presence filled the space. "Look, I don't know who you are," Bradley snapped, "but I've been sitting in that seat for 15 years. It's where I handle my business. Before flights, it's mine." "Mr. Whitfield," Imani said coolly, "I know exactly who you are, and while I respect your attachment to this particular chair, the lounge doesn't belong to you. I arrived first. I have a valid membership, and I'm not moving." Bradley's face darkened, a flush creeping up his neck. "Is this how you treat your loyal customers?" he demanded of Wayne, letting random people take their seats. The word random hung heavily in the air, a veiled insult, thick with implication. "Sir, I assure you, we're handling the matter," Wayne said hurriedly, before turning to Imani, lowering his voice. "Miss Johnson, please, as a courtesy to a long-standing member." "The answer is no," Imani said firmly, pulling out her phone. "And I want to be very clear. What's happening right now is discrimination. I'm being asked to move solely because Mr. Whitfield, a white man, wants my seat. I'm documenting this conversation, and I strongly suggest you reconsider your approach." Wayne's face flashed with panic before hardening into defensiveness. "That's absolutely untrue. This has nothing to do with anything like that. It's about respecting our established clientele." "Then why wasn't I considered established when I checked in?" Imani shot back. "Why did Carlton question my membership? Why am I being asked to move when there are plenty of other open seats for Mr. Whitfield to choose from?" The lounge was silent now, every guest watching, some with visible discomfort but none stepping forward. That too, Imani knew well, the bystanders unwilling to speak up when it counted. Wayne's voice dropped, tinged with warning. "If you continue to be difficult, I'm going to have to involve security." "Go ahead," Imani said, standing. "Call security. I'd love to explain to them how I'm being discriminated against in your establishment." Wayne hesitated, then exchanged a glance with Carlton before pulling out a radio. "Security to the VIP lounge, please. We have a situation." Bradley smirked, confident the system would, as it always had, bend to accommodate him. Imani remained standing, heart pounding but outwardly unshaken, continuing to quietly record the entire exchange on her phone. She had fought too long and too hard to be bullied out of a seat she had every right to occupy. Neither Bradley nor the staff knew just how costly this act of bias was about to become. Within minutes, to security, officers entered the lounge. The taller one, a heavy-set man with Trevor on his name tag, squared his shoulders as he approached, posture bristling with unwarranted authority. The shorter, stockier officer, Richard, flanked him, one hand resting casually, but visibly near his taser. Trevor addressed Wayne directly, ignoring Imani altogether. "What seems to be the problem here?" not bothering to assess the situation impartially. This woman is refusing to comply with staff requests, Wayne declared, gesturing toward Imani, as if she were an object rather than a person standing right beside him. She's causing a disturbance in our VIP area. Trevor turned to Imani, his expression already hard with judgment. Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your credentials and boarding pass. Imani kept her composure, though her heart pounded against her ribs. The scene was painfully familiar, being questioned, her presence treated as suspicious, her legitimacy challenged. It took her back to her first major tech conference, when security had stopped her 3 times, while white attendees passed freely, to the luxury car dealership, where the salesperson had asked if she was certain she could afford the car she wanted, to the high-end restaurant where the maître d' had tried to seat her near the kitchen. Despite her reservation for the best table in the house, here are my credentials, she said evenly, presenting her platinum membership card and first-class boarding pass. As I've explained, I'm a platinum member, fully entitled to access this lounge and select any available seat upon arrival. Trevor barely glanced at the documents before passing them to Richard, who scrutinized them with performative care as if hoping to uncover something illegitimate. How did you obtain this membership? Richard asked, his tone implying suspicion, as though there must have been something irregular about it, the same way everyone else does. Imani replied, voice steady. I travel frequently for business, and earned platinum status years ago. From the corner of her eye, Imani caught a glimpse of Bradley Whitfield, still watching the scene with smug satisfaction, as he lazily swirled a glass of scotch he'd acquired during the commotion. Around them, several other lounge guests had quietly begun recording the incident on their phones, the confrontation too blatant to ignore. The issue, Wayne cut in, is not her membership. It's her refusal to comply with staff requests to relocate within the lounge. Because those requests are discriminatory and unjustified, Imani countered, continuing to record on her phone. There's no policy reserving specific seats for individual members. Trevor's face darkened. Ma'am, lower your voice and comply with staff instructions. I'm speaking at a normal, professional volume, Imani replied calmly, acutely aware of how quickly black women were labeled loud, aggressive, or unruly, regardless of tone or circumstance. And I'm documenting this because I'm being discriminated against. No one is discriminating against you, Richard scoffed, his voice thick with dismissal. This is about following lounge protocol. What's the situation here? Dennis asked as he stepped into the lounge, his gaze sweeping over the scene before settling on Imani with immediate suspicion. This passenger is refusing to relocate and is disrupting the experience for our VIP members, Wayne offered quickly. I see, Dennis replied curtly, not bothering to ask for Imani's side. He turned toward her, offering a patronizing smile. Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but here at Silver Wingspan, we have certain expectations for behavior in our exclusive lounges. Imani recognized the tone instantly, the condescending cadence used on children or on adults, presumed irrational. She took a steadying breath, pressed the speaker button on her phone, and placed a call. Bennett, it's Imani. I need you on the line right now. I'm being discriminated against at the Silver Wingspan VIP lounge. After a brief pause, a clear, authoritative male voice came through the speaker. This is Bennett Williams, Chief Legal Counsel for Vertex Innovation Technologies. Who am I speaking with? Dennis blinked, momentarily caught off guard, then recovered. This is Dennis Morgan, Airport Manager for Silver Wingspan. There's no discrimination here, sir. Your client is refusing to follow staff instructions in a private lounge. Miss Johnson isn't my client, Bennett corrected sharply. She's my boss, and I'd like to understand precisely what instructions she's being asked to follow. Wayne cleared his throat, his earlier confidence visibly shaken. She was asked to move seats to accommodate a long-standing member's preference. I see, Bennett's voice cooled several degrees. Is there a written policy that assigns seating within the lounge based on membership seniority? Well, no, but, and has Ms. Johnson violated any stated terms of her platinum membership? Not technically. However, then, I'm struggling to identify any legal basis for threatening to remove her from a lounge she's fully entitled to access. Bennett continued, his tone sharpened, especially when the only apparent difference between Ms. Johnson and the member you're preferentially accommodating appears to be race and gender. The word race landed in the room like a dropped weight. Nearby patrons shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Dennis's jaw tightened. That's a serious and unfounded accusation, Dennis snapped. This has nothing to do with. I've heard enough. Bennett cut him off. Ms. Johnson, are they physically preventing you from remaining in your seat? Yes, Amani replied clearly. Security's been called and I've been threatened with removal. Dennis, Bennett's voice was razor sharp. I strongly advise you to reconsider your next move. Forcibly removing Ms. Johnson would constitute clear, documented discrimination and would result in immediate, legal action against Silver Wingspan Airlines, the airport authority, and you personally. Dennis flushed with anger, but the threat of legal consequences only stiffened his posture. Remove her from the lounge, he ordered, turning to Trevor and Richard. We don't negotiate with threats. Dennis, you're making a serious mistake, Amani warned, still calmly recording. But it was too late. Trevor stepped forward, deliberately bumping into the small table beside her chair. The full glass of champagne she'd been served earlier tipped over, splashing across her white blouse and tailored navy suit. Oh, my apologies, Trevor said with thinly veiled smugness. Accidents happen when people won't cooperate. Richard moved in on her other side. Without hesitation, both officers grabbed Amani by the arms. Lifting her from her seat, the champagne dripped down her clothing as they marched her toward the exit. You're assaulting a platinum member on camera, Amani stated loudly, her voice clear and steady. You've ruined my clothing and are removing me without cause. The lounge patrons stared in horrified silence as Amani Johnson, CEO of a billion-dollar company, was escorted out like a criminal. At that moment, a new figure appeared at the lounge entrance, an older white man with a silver wingspan executive pin gleaming on his lapel. His name tag read Dennis, airport manager. As Amani stood there, champagne staining her expensive clothes, some guests discreetly filmed the scene on their phones, while others averted their gaze in discomfort. No one intervened as she was shoved through the lounge doors. Amani caught one last glimpse of Bradley Whitfield settling comfortably into her vacated seat, raising his scotch glass in a mock toast toward Wayne and Dennis, out in the bustling terminal. Trevor and Richard finally released her arms. You can wait for your flight in the general boarding area, Trevor told her with a dismissive wave. And consider yourself lucky. We're not banning you from the airline altogether. They turned and left her standing alone in the crowded terminal, champagne dripping from her ruined outfit. Her dignity bruised, but her determination hardening. The Tokyo deal, the culmination of years of work, now hung in the balance. Her carefully chosen presentation attire was destroyed, and her pre-flight preparation window stolen, as travelers passed by, some staring openly, others pretending not to notice. Amani Johnson made a decision. This wasn't going to end here. Not for her. Not for anyone else who looked like her. With trembling hands, she pulled out her phone and texted her executive team. Emergency video, conference now. Silver Wingspan just made the biggest mistake of their corporate life. Social media caption. Have you ever been discriminated against and felt powerless in the moment? Comment if you've experienced unfair treatment based on race or gender. Hit if you believe businesses should face serious consequences for allowing discrimination. Subscribe to follow how this CEO turns public humiliation into corporate reckoning. What would you have done in Amani's place, and what do you think she's planning now? Stay tuned to witness her next power move. Amani slipped into a family restroom in the terminal, locking the door behind her. Her hands shook as she unzipped her carry-on, pulling out a spare blouse, black silk. Not the crisp white she'd planned for Tokyo, but it would have to do. Years of travel had taught her to prepare for contingencies. As she changed out of her champagne-soaked clothes, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes burned with quiet fury, though her face remained composed. This simmering, controlled rage had propelled her through a career's worth of closed doors, slights, and double standards. Siri, call executive team. Emergency conference. Within minutes, her leadership team appeared on screen. Carmen Rodriguez, VP of Finance, her sharp features framed by a sleek bob. Bennett Williams, Legal Director, his bow tie slightly crooked, as if hastily fastened. And Wesley Chen, Operations Chief, his normally calm expression replaced by tense concern. What happened? Carmen asked immediately, noting a changed outfit and the bathroom backdrop. AMMA recounted the incident with clinical precision, stripping emotion from her voice as she detailed every discriminatory act, each microaggression, every escalation. They physically removed you, Wesley demanded, his voice tight with restrained anger. On what grounds? On the grounds that I'm a black woman sitting in a white man's preferred seat, Amani replied flatly. But they've made a serious error in judgment. Bennett's eyes narrowed as his fingers flew across his keyboard. Multiple errors, in fact. First, the physical assault. Second, blatant discrimination. Third, he looked up with grim satisfaction. They clearly have no idea who you are, or that Vertex holds 28% of Silver Wingspan's stock. A beat of stunned silence followed. The aeronautics investment portfolio, Carmen breathed, realization dawning. The diversification strategy we implemented last quarter. Exactly, Amani confirmed, through our holding company. We're their largest individual shareholder, a fact Dennis and his enablers are about to learn the hard way. Wesley's fingers flew across his keyboard. I'm pulling up Silver Wingspan's internal history. Now, they've got 37 discrimination complaints filed in the last 3 years. 11 specifically mention VIP lounges. 3 directly named Dennis Morgan and Bradley Whitfield. Amani asked, her gaze hard. Our competitor, Carmen added, switching screens. Whitfield Technologies, the ones bidding against us for the Tokyo contract. They've been losing market share steadily over the past 18 months. Their security protocol is basically a weak knockoff of our earlier system, with vulnerabilities we've long since patched. So they ousted me to accommodate a competitor, actively working to sabotage our Tokyo deal, Amani summarized. Coolly interesting. She glanced at her watch. 45 minutes to boarding. Not much time, but enough. Here's what we're going to do, she said, her voice assuming the sharp, decisive tone that had steered Vertex through crises before. Bennett, draft for an emergency shareholder meeting. As 28% stakeholders, we have the right to call one immediately. Document every detail of today's incident and compile all prior discrimination complaints. Bennett nodded, already typing. Carmen, contact our investment desk. I want a complete valuation of Silver Wingspan's weaknesses. See if we can quietly acquire more shares before this goes public, and prep a statement for investors on how this affects our Tokyo strategy. On it, Carmen confirmed. Wesley, find me a private room in this terminal where I can join the board meeting. Then get Senator Washington on the phone. She sits on the Transportation Committee, Amani said, has been waiting for hard evidence of discriminatory practices in the airline industry. Tell Senator Washington I'll call her personally once I'm in the air. Wesley was already typing. She's actually in town for a fundraiser tonight, he replied. She might be able to meet you at the airport. Perfect, Amani said, her focus razor sharp. One more thing, I need all of you on an emergency board. Call in 30 minutes. We need formal approval for what I'm about to do. Her team signed off, dispersing to handle their assignments with practiced urgency. Amani packed her soiled clothes into a plastic bag, straightened her appearance, and reapplied her lipstick, a deep, defiant crimson. Her hair was still damp on one side from the spilled champagne, but she smoothed it back into its sleek, polished style. Wesley texted the location of an empty airline office they'd secured. As she made her way through the terminal, she noticed people pointing, whispering. Videos of her removal were already flooding social media. Hashtag silver wingspan discrimination was trending locally and climbing fast. The office was little more than a desk and 3 chairs, but it would serve. Amani logged into her laptop, and one by one, her board members joined the emergency video meeting. These were the people who had believed in her vision when others wouldn't, who had backed Vertex when banks and old guard firms had said no. After briefing them, she spoke plainly. The situation is simple. Silver Wingspan Airlines has discriminated against me, against one of their highest-tier customers, and by extension, against our company. I propose we use our position as their largest individual shareholder to demand immediate accountability. Roberta Cheng, one of her earliest investors, leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing, Amani? A clean sweep, Amani said without hesitation. We use our shares, rally other institutional investors, and call for the immediate removal of everyone involved, from the CEO down to the security staff who put hands on me. We enforce new, binding anti-discrimination policies across the airline, and we make it very public that this kind of behavior has real, corporate consequences. Michael Alcower, another board member, nodded gravely. That's aggressive, but, given the situation, appropriate. Question is, timing. Immediate, Amani said. I want the emergency shareholder meeting convened before my flight lands in Tokyo. While they're scrambling to contain the fallout, I'll be closing the deal. They tried to sabotage. There was a brief pause before the vote. Then, unanimous approval. The board empowered Amani to take any and all necessary actions to address the discrimination and protect Vertex's business interests. As she headed to her gate, her phone buzzed nonstop with news alerts. The incident had gone viral. Hashtag boycott Silver Wingspan was trending nationally. Major media outlets were requesting interviews. At the gate, flight attendants cast uneasy glances her way, visibly aware of who she was. When she presented her boarding pass, the agent's hands trembled slightly. Miss Johnson, we've upgraded you to our premium first-class suite, the agent stammered, her voice brittle with forced politeness. With our sincere apologies for any inconvenience earlier. The inconvenience of being forcibly removed from your lounge because of my race, Amani asked coolly. The agent paled. I'm not authorized to speak on that matter. But we hope you'll enjoy the upgraded accommodations. Amani took the new boarding pass without another word. As she waited to board, her phone rang. Senator Gloria Washington. Amani, the senator's commanding voice came through. I just saw the videos. This is exactly the evidence we've been waiting for. How are you holding up? Focused on what comes next, Amani replied. How fast can you convene a transportation committee hearing on airline discrimination? With this footage, I can have preliminary hearings announced before your plane touches down in Tokyo. This is textbook discrimination, and caught in high definition. Are you sure you want to fight this now, with your deal in play? Gloria Amani said, as boarding began. I've spent my entire career being told to wait for the right time to address discrimination. There is no right time. The time is always now. The senator chuckled, full of respect. I'll start drafting the call to hearing. As Amani boarded the plane, another text came in from Bennett. Emergency shareholder meeting set for tomorrow, 9 a.m. EST. CEO Lawrence Anderson being recalled from Aspen vacation. Stock down 4% in after-hours trading on discrimination reports. A small, satisfied smile crossed Amani's face as she settled into her premium suite. Flight attendants hovered nervously, offering champagne and amenities. "Is there anything we can do to make you more comfortable, Miss Johnson?" the chief attendant asked. Voice strained. AMMAN powered up her laptop for the Tokyo presentation. "Yes," she said without looking up. "Tell your corporate leadership to clear their schedules for tomorrow's shareholder meeting. Every single person involved in today's incident should be prepared to explain their actions." As the plane taxied for takeoff, Amani gazed out the window at the shrinking Silver Wingspan terminal. By the time she returned from Tokyo, it would be a very different airline. At 35,000 feet, Wi-Fi connected. Her devices exploded with notifications. The videos had gone global. #boycott Silver Wingspan had hit 1 million mentions in under an hour. Carmen's voice came through a secure video call. "It's happening, Amani." The video of Trevor deliberately knocking over the champagne is everywhere. Multiple angles. There's even footage of Bradley Whitfield smugly raising his glass once you were removed. Amani scrolled through the viral clips, her humiliation transforming in real time into a corporate reckoning. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was leading a movement. Bradley Whitfield lounged smugly in the seat Amani had been forced to vacate, raising his glass in a mocking toast. "The internet's identified everyone," Wesley reported grimly. Carlton Peters, the lounge receptionist, Wayne Simmons, lounge manager, Trevor Barnes, and Richard Gould, the security officers, Dennis Morgan, the airport manager, and, of course, Bradley Whitfield of Whitfield Technologies. They were all being flooded with messages. "And Silver Wingspan's official response?" Amani asked, her voice steady, despite the occasional turbulence jolting the plane. Bennett shared his screen. A hastily prepared corporate statement from Silver Wingspan's communications team appeared. "Silver Wingspan Airlines is aware of an incident that occurred in our VIP lounge earlier today. We are investigating the circumstances and remain committed to providing excellent service to all our valued customers. We take all allegations seriously and will address this matter internally." "Boilerplate damage control," Bennett scoffed. Meanwhile, their stock's down 7% since markets opened on boycott calls alone. "And Lawrence Anderson?" Amani asked. Silver Wingspan's CEO had been enjoying a ski vacation in Aspen when the crisis broke. "He's already on his private jet heading back," Carmen reported. "But it's too late. Social media sleuths have surfaced a string of allegations about how he ignored internal discrimination complaints. A former HR director's doing interviews now, claiming Anderson personally quashed multiple reports of preferential treatment for white male executives." A news alert popped onto Amani's screen. CNN was running a special report, complete with discrimination experts and industry analysts weighing in. The on-screen chyron read, "Black female, CO removed from airline lounge, racial discrimination or misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding here," Amani said flatly. "The videos speak for themselves." Witnesses had begun sharing first-hand accounts. A college professor seated nearby had posted a detailed Twitter thread confirming Amani's professionalism and unjust treatment, despite her platinum status. A flight attendant from a rival airline anonymously claimed Silver Wingspan had an unwritten Platinum Plus policy, one that unofficially prioritized certain white male executives for premium accommodations. Meanwhile, Bradley Whitfield was facing fallout of his own. As his identity spread online, internet detectives connected him to Whitfield Technologies and its head-to-head competition with Vertex for the Tokyo contract. His company's stock had already dropped nearly 12% amid fears of reputational damage. Whitfield Technologies issued a statement distancing themselves from him, Wesley reported. "But no one's buying it." Their Japanese partners are especially uneasy. You know how seriously they take public disgrace. Amani allowed herself a small, knowing smile. In Japanese business culture, public embarrassment was no small matter. Bradley's actions would be a permanent stain. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Senator Washington. Transportation Committee emergency session scheduled for Tuesday. Subpoenas being prepared. This stops now. As the crisis spiraled, Silver Wingspan scrambled to control the narrative. Their social media team posted a longer statement, touting their commitment to diversity alongside staged photos of multicultural staff members. Within minutes, several former employees identified themselves in those same photos, and publicly shared their own stories of being marginalized by the airline. It's getting worse for them by the hour, Carmen noted. 3 competing airlines have publicly denounced Silver Wingspan's actions and offered you lifetime VIP status. Amani checked the time. Still hours from Tokyo. But she couldn't let this distract from the $750 million deal waiting on the other side of the Pacific. Keep monitoring the situation, she instructed. But I need to focus on Tokyo. We didn't come this far to lose sight of our objective. Since takeoff, the flight attendants had treated Amani with almost reverential deference, their movements careful, their voices strained. The chief attendant approached her now. "Miss Johnson," she began. "The captain asked me to inform you that CEO Anderson has requested to speak with you personally upon landing." "I'm sure he has," Amani replied coolly. "Please, inform the captain that Mr. Anderson can address his concerns at tomorrow's emergency shareholder meeting. Until then, I have business to attend to." The attendant blanched slightly and quickly retreated. Amani noticed other passengers glancing at her with newfound recognition. Some nodded respectfully. A few surreptitiously took photos. Her phone buzzed with another update from Bennett. Senator Washington has expanded the investigation. FAA now involved reviewing Silver Wingspan's compliance with anti-discrimination regulations for all federally serviced airports. The consequences were cascading beyond anything Wayne, Dennis, Trevor, or even Anderson could have imagined when they'd decided to flex their petty authority over one black woman in a lounge seat. What they thought would be a momentary display of control had become an industry-wide reckoning. As Amani prepped for her presentation, occasionally glancing at the unfolding storm, she reflected on the countless, quieter indignities she and so many others had endured over the years. The ones that never went viral, that never sparked hearings or public statements, that left people like her moving seats, accepting daily humiliations, and carrying them silently because they lacked the resources to fight back. The thought stiffened her resolve. This wasn't just about one incident in one lounge on one day. This was about proving, unmistakably, that discrimination had consequences. Real, measurable, career-destroying consequences, even for powerful corporations. Even for smug executives who'd never been held to account by the time the plane began its descent into Tokyo. #boycott Silver Wingspan had amassed over 5 million mentions. News crews were waiting at the airport, alerted to her arrival and eager for her first public statement. But Amani Johnson had a presentation to deliver and a contract to secure. The reckoning for Silver Wingspan would come in full, and it would start tomorrow. Took seats at a side table. These individuals carried out the discrimination, Imani said, but they didn't create the environment that made it possible. That responsibility lies with everyone in this room who ignored previous incidents, who created unwritten policies favoring certain customers over others, who looked the other way when complaints were filed. Lawrence Anderson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The airline industry is competitive, or platinum members expect certain courtesies. Courtesies? Amani's voice was sharp. Is that what you call forcing a qualified platinum member to give up her seat for a white man? Is that what you call having security officers physicalarum her while deliberately spilling champagne on her clothes? Are those the courtesies your preferred customers expect? Anderson fell silent. his defense withering under her precise articulation of what had actually occurred. Imani turned her attention to Dennis. Morgan murmured, "This report indicates you've been named in 3 previous discrimination complaints. In each case the complaint was dismissed without investigation. Would you care to explain?" Morgan straightened defensively. "Those complaints were without merit. Customers sometimes use discrimination when they don't get their way. Without merit," Imani repeated. "Just like me complaint would have been dismissed as without merit if multiple passengers hadn't recorded the incident. Is that correct?" Morgan's silence was damning. Imani addressed Wayne. "Next, Mr. Simonscan, you explain the unwritten policy of giving certain platinum members priority over others." Wayne shifted nervous slithers. "No official policy, it's just that some members they spend more, fly more frequently." Bradley Whitfield, Money, stated flatly. "The man you accommodated by removing me, did you verify that he actually spent more or flew more frequently than I do before deciding he deserved my seat?" "Well, no, Buths, a long-time member. I've been member for 8 years. I fly internationally, at least twice monthly. My company books over $5 million in annual travel with Silver Wingspan. Did you know any of that for deciding I was less deserving of that seat?" Wayne looked at the table. "No, ma'am." Imani turned to the security officers. "Trevor and Richard, you chose to physically remove me despite seeing my valid credentials. You deliberately spilled champagne on my clothing. What part of your training suggested that was appropriate?" Trevor attempted bravado. "We're following orders from management. It's not our job to question following orders." Imani cut him off. "The defense aftos, who lacked the moral courage to refuse unjust instructions. Did either of you consider for even a moment that what you were doing might be wrong?" Both men remained silent. Finally, Imani addressed Carlton, the receptionist who had first questioned her presence. "You were the first point of contact. Mr. Peters, you set this entire chain of events in motion by questioning my platinum status despite seeing my valid card." Why? Carlton swallowed hard. It was just unusual, Lusul, to see a black woman as a platinum member. Imani finished for him. "Despite the card in my hand, despite my name on your computer screen, you found it unusual enough to alert your manager." The discomfort in the room was palpable. These confrontations were laying bare the unconscious biases and systemic discrimination that had been normalized within the company culture. Imani returned her attention to the board. "Now that we've established the facts, let's discuss solutions." As the representative of Vertex Innovation Technologies holding 32% of Silver Wingspan shares, I propose the following actions. She outlined a comprehensive plan: immediate termination of all employees involved in incident, establishment of an independent review board for discrimination complaints, mandatory anti-bias training for all customer facing staff, revision of all VIP lounge policies to ensure equitable treatment, and the appointment of a chief diversity officer reporting directly to the board. Additionally, she continued, I nominate Zara Williams to fill the vacant CEO position. Murmurs as rippled through the room. Zara Williams was a highly respected aviation executive who had previously been passed over for leadership roles, despite her stellar qualifications. M. Williams is black. Board Chairman Fletcher noted awkwardly. Yes, she is. Imani agreed. She's also a 20-year industry veteran with an MBA from Wharton, experience as crew of regional carriers, and a proven track record of operational excellence. The fact that you immediately noted her rather than her qualifications perfectly illustrates the problem we're addressing today. Fletcher flushed with embarrassment. I call for an immediate vote on these proposals. Imani concluded. What followed was a formality, with Imani's substantial shareholding and the support of other investors. Outraged by the discrimination and subsequent stock decline, the measures passed overwhelmingly. Lawrence Anderson watched in stunned silence as his legacy was dismantled. In a single afternoon, as the meeting concluded, Imani approached Dennis, Wayne, Trevor, Richard and Carlton, who had been sitting in humiliated silence through those. Vote. You're all terminated effective immediately, she informed them. Human resources will process your paperwork downstairs. Your company credentials are already deactivated. Dennis rose angrily. This is excessive. One incident captured on camera. Amanda corrected him. How many others went unrecorded? How many people did you humiliate who didn't have the platform or resources to fight back? This isn't excessive, it's accountability. As they were escorted from the boardroom, Amani turned to address the remaining executives and board members. Silver Wingspan has an opportunity to transform itself from a cautionary tale into a model for corporate accountability. The changes we've approved today are just the beginning. The world is watching how proceed from here. Patricia Alvarez approached Amani as the meeting proceeded. Miss Johnson, would you consider taking a more active role in our transformation? Joining the board yourself? Imani shook her head. My company requires my full attention, especially with our new Tokyo contract, but I'll be watching Silver Wingspan's progress very carefully. As a major shareholder, I have a vested interest in seeing these changes implemented effectively. As she left the boardroom, Bennett fell and tossed it beside her. That was masterful, he said quietly, but there will be backlash. Will say you went too far, and others will say, I didn't go far enough. Amani replied, discrimination persists. Consequences are rare. Today there were consequences. Ounce. The Silver Wingspan headquarters. A crowd of reporters awaited. Camera flashes erupted. As Amani emerged from the building, she paused briefly at the microphones. Today, Silver Wingspan took steps toward addressing systemic discrimination within its corporate culture, she stated. As a shareholder and as a customer who experienced this discrimination firsthand, I'm cautiously optimistic about these changes, but the work of creating truly equitable spaces never ends. It requires constant vigilance and a willingness to hold power accountable. As questions shouted from every direction, Imani stepped into her waiting car. Through the window, she caught a glimpse of Dennis Wayne, Trevor Reacher, and Carlton exiting through a side door, carrying boxes of personnel belongings, their faces a mix of anger and shock as they faced the consequences of their actions, for perhaps the first time in their professional lives. The corporate showdown had ended in decisive victory, but for Amani Johnson this was Silver Wingspan could spiral without her immediate attention. Amani had already set the wheels in motion, and now they would turn inexorably toward justice, grinding down every person who had participated in her humiliation. As the plane touched down at Tokyo's Haneda airport, Amani straightened the collar of her black silk blouse, took a final glance at her reflection, and prepared to step into a new arena, one where she would, once again, have to prove herself exceptional. The difference was that this time, the world was watching, and many were finally seeing the quiet, relentless reality she had navigated her entire life. The moment she entered the arrivals terminal, a sea of cameras and reporters surged toward her. What began as a domestic scandal had crossed international borders, becoming a global conversation about race, power, and accountability in corporate spaces. Miss Johnson, can you comment on the Silver Wingspan incident? Called a reporter from Japan Today. Will you be taking legal action against the airline? Shouted another, from an international agency. Amani paused, composed as ever. I'm here in Tokyo for an important business meeting. What happened at Silver Wingspan reflects a systemic issue present in many industries. My focus right now is on my company's innovations and our valued Japanese partnerships. Thank you. With that, she moved through the crowd with quiet authority, her Japanese associates guiding her swiftly toward a waiting car. Inside the vehicle, Amani checked her phone. The presentation for Vertex's AI security system was scheduled for 2 p.m. at the Tokyo International Finance Center. She had 4 hours to prepare, focus, and steady herself. Johnson said her liaison, Kenji Tanaka, respectfully. The executives are very impressed by how you handled the situation with Silver Wingspan. Such dignity under pressure speaks volumes about your character. Amani offered a nod of gratitude. In Japanese business culture, how one conducted themselves during adversity often mattered as much as technical capability or financial terms. unintentionally. The silver wingspan incident had elevated her standing among the Japanese executives. The local news has covered it extensively, Kenji added. Many here are expressing support for you. There's particular outrage that a CEO traveling for international business would be treated that way. I appreciate the support, Kenji. But let's stay focused on today's presentation. Understood? Any word from our competition? Kenji's expression darkened slightly. Whitfield's son arrived yesterday, but after the video surfaced, several executives were reluctant to meet with him. His presentation has been rescheduled twice. Amani absorbed this without visible reaction, but inwardly, she registered the shift. Bradley Whitfield's arrogance had caused more than her temporary humiliation. It was now actively undermining his business prospects in a culture that valued discretion, harmony, and respect. At the hotel, Amani refreshed herself and changed into her backup presentation outfit, a tailored charcoal suit with subtle jade accessories, a combination her team had carefully selected to appeal to Japanese sensibilities. As she prepared, updates continued pouring in. Silver wingspan stock down 12%. Read a text from Carmen. Emergency board meeting underway. Anderson issued a video apology. It's being torn apart online. Then, from Bennett. We now control 32% of silver wingspan stock. Additional investors have pledged support for leadership changes. We have the votes. Amani allowed herself a brief, measured moment of satisfaction before refocusing. The Tokyo deal had been years in the making, and while Silver Wingspan would soon answer for its actions, her mission in Japan remained paramount. At 1:45 p.m., Amani arrived at the Tokyo International Finance Center, a gleaming glass hand-steel landmark in the heart of the city's business district. She was escorted to a preparation suite, where her local team awaited. Johnson Akiko Yamamoto, Vertex's lead Japanese engineer, greeted her with a deep bow. Everything is prepared. The executives have extended your presentation window by 30 minutes for additional questions, a very positive sign. The presentation room was vast, tiered, and filled with over 30 executives from Japan's largest financial institutions, technology firms, and government agencies. At the center of the front row sat Hiroshi Nakamura, the legendary CEO of Japan's largest banking conglomerate, and the primary decision-maker for the contract. As Amani was introduced, she noted the heightened attention from the room. Several executives even nodded subtly in what appeared to be respect. The incident had preceded her, creating an unexpected backdrop of sympathy and admiration. For the next 90 minutes, Amani guided the executives through Vertex's AI security system, demonstrating how it could detect and neutralize even the most sophisticated cyber attacks targeting financial infrastructure. She navigated seamlessly between granular technical explanations and strategic overviews, employing her limited but carefully rehearsed Japanese at key moments, which visibly pleased the audience. In blind testing, Amani explained, our system detected and neutralized 100% of penetration attempts, including several previously unknown vectors specifically designed to exploit financial systems. The question session that followed was as rigorous as she'd expected, deeply technical, exacting, and thorough. She fielded each inquiry with precision, occasionally deferring to her specialists for specifics, but always maintaining authority over the room. At the conclusion, Hiroshi Nakamura stood an unusual, highly significant gesture. Johnson, he began formally, your presentation was exceptional. Equally remarkable is your composure and character. We have all seen the unfortunate incident that occurred before your arrival. Many would have postponed such an important meeting. Your professionalism speaks not only for you, but for your entire company. Amani bowed respectfully. Thank you, Nakamura-san. In business, as in life, we must overcome obstacles to achieve meaningful goals. This partnership is too important to delay. A ripple of approval moved through the room. We will deliberate, Nakamura continued. But I will tell you, Whitfield Technologies' presentation was insufficient for our needs. We will contact you shortly." As the meeting adjourned, Kenji approached, visibly elated. "Johnsonson, that was extraordinary. Nakamura-san never comments before deliberation. The contract is virtually yours." Amani maintained her composed exterior until she reached the privacy of her car. Only then did she allow herself a brief, silent moment of triumph. Her phone buzzed. "Carmen, we did it," she announced without preamble. "The board just voted. Lawrence Anderson is out, effective immediately. Dennis Morgan is fired. Wayne Simmons and the others are suspended, pending investigation." "Good," Amani replied. "Shareholder meetings on for tomorrow. There's heavy support for a complete policy overhaul and mandatory anti-discrimination training for all staff. Amani, your grandmother would be proud. This is going to change things for a lot of people." The mention of her grandmother, the woman who taught her that she'd have to be twice as good to get half as far, brought a tightness to Amani's throat. She swallowed it down. "Send me the full report on Silver Wingspan's discrimination history," she said evenly. "I want everything before tomorrow's meeting." As her car slipped into the flow of Tokyo's busy streets, her phone rang again. Another battle, another arena, and Amani Johnson was ready. Were escorted to a row of chairs along the wall. A hush fell over the room as everyone grasped what was about to happen. "Gentlemen," Amani began, her voice cool but resolute, "this is your opportunity to account for your actions, not to me, but to this board and the shareholders whose investments you've endangered." She gestured to Dennis Morgan. "You first." Morgan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Look, I was following protocol," he stammered. "There's no protocol for singling out black executives in business class lounges, damaging their property, and having them forcibly removed without cause." Amani shot back. "You weren't following policy. You were following prejudice." The other employees fared no better under scrutiny. Wayne Simmons tried to claim he hadn't realized who she was. Trevor Barnes attempted to blame confusion. Richard Gould remained mostly silent, pale and sweating. Only Carlton Peters, the receptionist, managed a genuine apology, his voice wavering as he admitted to being pressured by his superiors. Amani turned back to the board. "This culture of plausible deniability stops here. I'm submitting the following: shareholder resolutions for immediate vote. Permanent termination of Dennis Morgan, Wayne Simmons, Trevor Barnes, and Richard Gould. Mandatory independent third-party audits of all employee. Discrimination complaints over the past 5 years. Creation of an external oversight committee with authority to review and enforce anti-discrimination policies. Immediate restructuring of Silver Wingspan's executive leadership, with a new chief diversity and ethics officer reporting directly to the board. Establishment of a $50 million fund to support passengers and employees affected by discrimination or harassment incidents." The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Fletcher tried to object. "This is highly irregular." "What's irregular?" Amani cut in. "Is a corporation ignoring 43 formal complaints, retaliating against whistleblowers, and endangering its own financial future through negligence and arrogance." Carmen spoke up from her seat. "With our voting bloc and pledged shares, we have the numbers to pass these measures. If the board refuses, we'll take it directly to a shareholder vote next month. And every one of you will answer to your investors for why you opposed accountability." The room fell silent again. After a tense beat, William Fletcher exhaled heavily, put it to a vote. One by one, the board members raised their hands. The resolutions passed unanimously. "Effective immediately," Patricia Alvarez announced, barely concealing her own relief. Dennis Morgan and the others were swiftly escorted out of the room. Amani gathered her documents, looking once more around the now humbled boardroom. "I didn't come here for apologies," she said. "I came for change. Now, you've got your chance. Don't waste it." As she and her team exited, Carmen caught up beside her. You just rewrote the playbook, Amani. Good, Amani replied, a rare smile breaking through. Because I'm not finished. Outside, reporters waited for statements. The sun glinted off the mirrored glass of Silver Wingspan's headquarters. The storm Amani had unleashed still unfolding, but now, unmistakably, on her terms. Them no. Asterisk, asterisk, why not? Amani asked gently, though her voice carried undeniable authority. Carlton hesitated. I don't know. I shouldn't have. But you did. Amani let the words settle in the air. And Trevor, Richard, when you were called to remove me, did either of you stop to ask whether I'd actually done anything wrong? The two security officers exchanged a glance. Trevor spoke first. We were told to escort a disruptive guest out of the lounge, and it didn't occur to you to question why a well-dressed black woman in a business lounge with valid credentials was the so-called disruption. Trevor's jaw clenched. No, it didn't. That's the problem, Amani said quietly. That's the pattern. A million small assumptions and unchecked decisions that, added together, create the kind of public humiliation I experienced. And you've done it before, not just to me, but to others. Some walked away angry. Some walked away hurt. Some never came back. She turned to Dennis Morgan. And you, Mr. Morgan, you didn't just fail to intervene. You actively escalated the situation. You made it clear through your words and actions that you saw me as a problem to be removed, not a customer to be respected. You set the tone for your team. And whether you admit it or not, that tone was racial bias wrapped in corporate authority. Dennis's face was red, his knuckles white against the table's edge. But he said nothing. Amani took a breath. I didn't ask for this meeting to humiliate you. I asked for it because accountability isn't only about punishment, it's about recognition. I want you to leave this room understanding the weight of what you did, not just because it cost you your jobs, but because it diminishes the dignity of every person who looks like me and walks into a space where people like you get to decide who belongs. The room was silent, heavy with unspoken realizations. I don't hate any of you, Amani said finally. I pity the smallness of your vision and the harm it's done to yourselves and others. And I sincerely hope that wherever you go from here, you'll remember this moment and choose better. She stood, closing her portfolio. Your terminations are effective immediately. HR will see you out. Brenda Martinez stepped forward with folders in hand. The former employees rose, some shamefaced, some sullen. Only Carlton paused before leaving. Ms. Johnson, he began, his voice rough. I am sorry, not because I got caught, because I made you feel small when you weren't. Amani gave him a measured nod. Thank you for saying that. Now do better. And, with that, she left the room. You're supposed to decide who you want to be from this point forward. The room went still again. This isn't about gratitude, Amani continued, and it isn't about me. It's about whether you care enough about your own integrity, your own legacy, to face what you did, do the work to change, and build something better. Not for me, for yourselves, for your future co-workers, and for every passenger who walks through your doors. Trevor spoke quietly. I don't know if I can undo what I did. You can't, Amani replied. But you can make sure it never happens again. And you can help others see the world differently, because you learned what it feels like to be on the wrong side of your own assumptions. Wayne Simmons took a shaky breath, eyes brimming. I want to try, he said simply. Carlton gave a small, solemn nod. Me too. Trevor looked over at Richard, who finally muttered, Yeah, all right. Only Dennis remained impassive, his arms crossed, folder unopened, in front of him. No one's forcing you, Amani told him. Accountability offers a path, but it can't make you walk it. She stood and gathered her things. This meeting wasn't about punishment, it was about truth. about whether you'd finally be honest with yourselves, and whether Silver Wingspan can begin to rebuild something better from the wreckage you helped create. She paused at the door. The choice is yours. Without another word, she left the room. Promotion, Amani chuckled softly, accepting the handshake. I didn't create anything. The system did. I just refused to let it go unchallenged. Zara nodded, the candor between them unforced. Well, either way, you forced all of us to wake up. It's been the hardest 6 months of my career, and the most meaningful. That's how you know it matters, Amani replied. If it were easy, it wouldn't change anything. The two women stood for a moment, surveying the room, a gathering of executives, activists, community leaders, and the next generation of entrepreneurs watching closely. You know, Zara said, quietly, the Johnson standards are already being adopted by 3 other major carriers. It's becoming a new industry baseline. Good, Amani said, with a satisfied nod. It should never have taken this long. A server passed with a tray of champagne. Both women declined. What's next for you? Zara asked. Building, Amani answered. I've spent years breaking down barriers. Now I'm ready to build something new, a space designed for everyone from the start. Not one we have to fight to be included in later. If you do, Zara smiled, let me know. I might want in. They parted with a quiet, mutual respect, two women shaped by a collision of injustice and opportunity, determined to leave their industries better than they found them. Outside, a reporter caught sight of Amani and called out, Miss Johnson, any regrets about how it all played out? She paused, considering. I regret that it had to happen at all, she replied, but not what came after. Sometimes change demands a spark. I just happened to be holding the match. And with that, Amani Johnson stepped into the night, already thinking about what she'd set alight next. Change isn't about a single victory. It's about shifting the landscape so that no one has to fight that same battle again. The policy updates, the rehabilitation programs, the Johnson standards, all of it mattered. But the most lasting legacy was in the quiet, personal moments. A humbled former manager confronting his biases, a board finally recognizing overlooked talent, and a young girl named Zoe seeing not just what was possible, but what was expected of her generation. As Amani boarded her flight to Tokyo, she knew she hadn't just claimed a seat in a lounge, or a boardroom, or a billion-dollar negotiation. She'd claimed space in the narrative of what leadership looks like, and the world would be better for it. Beautifully put. What you've written here reads like the closing narration of a deeply affecting documentary or social impact piece. It ties the story's personal and systemic stakes together powerfully, underscoring how meaningful change comes not from empty apologies, but from accountability with real consequences. A few reflections and suggestions, if you're open to them. Your closing question is effective, inviting the audience to reflect on what they would do in Amani's position. Personalizes the issue. It helps people confront their own values and potential for action. The phrase dignity is non-negotiable, is excellent, crisp, declarative, and memorable. It could easily become a rallying line for discussions about corporate equity work. You might consider one additional sentence or thought connecting Zoe's moment back to the audience, reinforcing that the real measure of progress is when those previously excluded see themselves as naturally belonging. For example, because when one person refuses to move, a path is cleared for generations who will never have to fight for a seat at the table because they'll know it was always theirs. If you're thinking about using this as a YouTube video script, article, true or speech, it's compelling as is, but adding a small echo of Zoe's story in the final words could leave an even deeper imprint.